is at the end of it? These are all very conceptual. At the end of it, what's the bottom line conclusion in today's time of all this presentation? What is the recommended gender loan changes, if any?
So it's a story that's being still written, but the idea is that the challenge of our generation is to balance equality with difference. In Hebrew, it's called shavim ve'achshonim, equal but different. So this slogan of equal but different, this is the challenge. How do we have them be equal in status and equal in recognition and equal in the way they influence society and the world and themselves, but also while acknowledging and embracing the differences? This is the challenge in our generation. What does it mean exactly in particular detail? So it starts with women entering the fold of learning Torah and more entering. This is a revolution in process, that women need to learn more Torah and write their own books and teach their own teachings and do chavrutot with their husbands, and then we'll see what happens. Yes.
Well, that's interesting because, okay, so it's sort of a twofold question. I don't know if you heard the Church of England just came out with, like, they want to change the Bible to a gender-neutral God.
Church of England, okay.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And now the other churches, like, of course, that had a pretty radical response, and, like, the other side was saying, you know, this is our Father in heaven, and he's masculine. It's like, what do you just want to get God out of it, and, you know, the whole. So I was watching this debate, and I would love a very simple way to address this to our Christian.
To ourselves first.
Well, for ourselves, that's right. There's that, but for ourselves, you talk about this idea that, you know, that women have to learn more and right. I mean, all of that empowerment is great, but we still have huge swaths of homework, like soccer, for instance. Like, they're not allowed to read Hebrew. Like, they're not allowed to learn in the schools. They don't learn Hebrew.
Yep.
Because they don't want the girls learning.
Yep.
So this is like, how do we even begin to, like, how do we deal with that? Because these are just the most amazing, brilliant Asia's Chayils. Like, these women are incredible, and it's just, how do we so
okay, so it's two questions.
Two extremes.
Yeah, so it's two questions. So one was about what is called the God language. Why if God, so I'm going to answer them one at a time, I'll try. So according to Kabbalah and many interpretations, God is not male nor female. He's either both or neither, or something that is a transcendence that is above them and includes both their elements. And as we saw, the Kabbalist, the name, Havaya, the name of God, is male, female. That is equal aspects of femininity and masculinity. And of course, we know that there's a pair called the Kodesh Baruch Hu and the Shekhinah, and they're both equal partners or equal aspects of this one godliness, one divinity that is genderless. So if so, then why does the Tanakh and all the blessings and all the language that we use all day in regular religious speech refers to God as male? From the very second word of the Tanakh, Bereshit bara, not bar'a, not bar'u. It's masculine. So I think the best answer is the following. The male aspect of God is the transcendent aspect of God, and the female aspect of God is the immanent aspect of God. This is the meaning of the Kodesh Baruch Hu and the Shekhinah. Why is the feminine immanent and the masculine transcendent? Yeah, I think the best way, the simplest way to answer this is to think about the most basic, foundational, archetypal experience of each child regarding their parents. The mother we are born out of. We were in her womb, we were born out of her womb, and then we suckled with her from her body, and it was very, very close and intimate. This is immanence. Also, immanence has the word ima in it. That's just on the side. So, and the father, on the other hand, didn't grow up in his body, and we didn't come out of his body, and we don't have this intimate suckling experience. Again, even if, here and there people don't suck, it doesn't matter. It's an archetypal thing. And the father is in a way someone that we are let known that he is our father. But from the mother, it's like this intimate knowledge of coming from being born out of her, and the father is this. So this is your father. And so the archetypal experience of the father is of transcendence, is of something far away that I'm not familiar with, and I get to know maybe later on. I'm also a little bit intimidated by it. It's a feeling of yir'ah towards the father, whereas ima is familiar and close and intimate, and it's a feeling of ahava and closeness. And I think it's very simple. The reason that the Torah the Bible language, religious language, the way the Bible was given, the time the Bible was given, and also for each and every generation, in each and every Jewish child, the first experience of God has to be the transcendent experience, and only then can you also experience God as immanent. And the reason is that if you first experience God as immanent, then you get the illusion that you can understand and fathom what God is. Because it's close and familiar and intimate, and basically you would identify God with Mother Nature, and that would be totally pagan. And the whole idea of something that's transcendent and alien and not understood, and that you don't, and that's different from you and far away from you, this otherness of God, it's the first thing you need to experience. So yir'ah comes before ahava in a very basic way. Even if for somebody tshuva, it's the opposite, that first they feel God's love and then they realize they can also have fear. But basically for a child growing up, and for humanity as a child growing up, the feeling it had to be the image of a father. Had it been the image of a mother, it would have been pantheistic. That is, nature would have been divinity. It would have been a big Mother Earth pagan kind of experience. And then there wouldn't have been the image of a God who commands and invites you to transcend, and who tells you things that you can't learn on your own from your own belly. And then, once you internalize this image of God the Father, God the transcendent Father, then you're able to listen. You know what? There's amazing, we haven't told you before, but now that you're old enough, I can tell you, God is also feminine. There's also the Shekhinah. And the Shekhinah is immanent, and it's inside reality, and it's inside you. And it's there with the things that are broken and imperfect, and it accepts you for who you are, while the transcendent one is calling upon you to rise and be above of who you are. And the whole rise of the feminine is the rise of the Shekhinah from its dust. It's the revival of the Shekhinah. So the language is there, but the Torah is both nigle and nistar. On the nigle level, God is a man, is a father. On a nistar level, God is both. And even, you can say, in our generation, we need to put more emphasis on the feminine side. This is the rise of the feminine. We should talk even more about the Shekhinah and have more room and more room for the feminine aspect of God, which has been in the shadows so far. So now what the Church of England is trying to do is that the root is there's a holy root, like everything, there's a spark. The spark is that they feel that God is not a male, and they're right, God is not male. But they're trying to, instead of having this long roundabout way, which is always the deeper way, they're trying to create a shortcut. And the shortcut will lead to androgyny, and androgyny is the muddling up of the watercolors. And that's what's going to happen from the Church of England edition of the Bible. It's going to strengthen this androgynous sense that there are no genders, and it's a shortcut to equality that it doesn't reach equality, it doesn't reach good relationships or anything. And the better way to go about it, and a good thing to maybe give our Christian friends, right, before we start teaching them real Torah and everything, the whole shebang, that just for the time being, like a first aid, is to tell them that they should start learning Kabbalah or teach a little bit of Kabbalah. They have a tradition, by the way, of this a little bit, and they should teach their students that there's masculine God language on the surface, for the reason I just said, but on the deeper level, but it's like second grade stuff. It's like advanced theology is that it's really both masculine and feminine, and it goes without saying even that it is so. And then it becomes much more interesting. And by the way, we have the same dynamic in the way the chuppahs are held. So the way the chuppahs are held, that the kiddushin, it's the man mekadesh et ha'isha, right? And then many people say, so no, let's have it symmetrical. So he would be mekadesh ota, and she would be mekadesh oto, and he would give her the ring and she would give him the ring, and that's what they do in Reform and conservative weddings, right? And then again, it becomes this androgynous thing that is all symmetrical. It's the same thing, but Chassidut has a better way of going about it. Chassidut explains that the kiddushin is the man mekadesh et ha'isha. He's active, she's passive, and because these are the traditional roles. She needs to be courted and wooed and asked. She needs to be wanted. She needs to feel wanted. He needs to come out of himself and be on his own the one who says, "I want to marry you." And not just sort of rely on her, because that's not manly. He needs to be there and make the decision and say the words. But then the stage of nisu'in, the second stage, according to Chassidut, it's the woman mekadeshet ha'isha. Mekadeshet ha'isha. This is the Hasidic explanation for what's going on in the other stage. The other stage is that the nisu'in stage, which is entered the cheder ichud, and is that she is now the one elevating and is sanctifying him. And so there's there's a whole essay about this in Hebrew. But again, you can go about it in a short way and a long way. So that's one answer. The second answer, it's much shorter regarding the Satmar women, or a whole spats of the frum world. What can we do? We can each do what we can in our own circles, in our own communities. And we lead the way. It's pioneer work, and we have to hope and daven that gradually. And I can tell you one thing: if the only feminists around will be the Neshot HaKotel, then the Orthodox, the ultra-Orthodox world will be more anti even the ideas that I put forth here that are all source-based. But if there's an alternative Orthodox version, a truly Orthodox, frum version to feminism, that Kulei Hai V'Ulai may soften up the ultra-Orthodox world, and they'll be able to listen to this. Because if it's Neshot HaKotel, then they only become more anti any change. So once we have a holy Torah Orthodox version of this, then that'll be the thing to possibly, hopefully, Bezrat Hashem, change everything. Yes.
You said something more about Shtina. You said the Shtina is in it and it's inside you.
Inside you, inside reality, inside history, inside the process of what's going on, inside the bottom up process.
How do we experience that sense of Hashem
In you.
in us? Yeah.
It's in, for example, it's when you learn something from the Torah, and so the Torah is saying what it says in black and white letters and old traditional verses and sources, and that's a kind of masculine voice because it's sort of there, but then it has to echo within you. So, for example, if you're trying every time you take a Torah idea and you say it in your own words, that's the Shekhinah. Because you're able to internalize it, and then it's reborn in new words that are your words. And this is the Shekhinah. And Hashem wants this. This is why he said, Shir l'shir chadash, sing to me a new song. The old songs are stale. I want new songs all the time. And these new songs, is each and every one has to find, the Shekhinah is more individual. Just like the oral Torah. The oral Torah is very individual. There's a lot of different rabbis, a lot of different voices. The Torah is like the written Torah is like a monologue, and the oral Torah is like a dialogue, like a many-sided dialogue. It's different neshamot, mishnah, neshama, all the neshamot of Jews speaking, and this is still going on. So each neshama has to find its own voice and words and chidushim and its letter in the Torah. All this is the Shekhinah. So when you find your letter and your voice and your style and you write your book, and this is the Shekhinah coming to reality.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a little affirmative action to it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not really sure how to ask this question, so I'm kind of going to think out loud with you. So I would say like 80% of this incredible share was mainly focused on, I guess, the role of the woman, right? The rise.
Yeah.
20% of the other.
Yeah.
And what I want to ask is, like, we spoke about this reversal, this role reversal.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit more of what role the men will play in a specific typically younger men. I think it's kind of easier to kind of accept this sort of role reversal as an older man who perhaps might be already married, already knows what it feels to be masculine. But I don't you have any sons or anything, but younger teenagers, younger men who are trying to find their place in this world as a masculine, approaching the table on the dating scene. The world is pretty much a masculine individual, but now accepting this conversation while not losing his masculinity.
Yeah. So, very good question. Hard question. Good question. So, generally, the role of men, in particular, younger men. So, I think for men, the challenge is, how do I become very much in tune with my heart, with my emotional space? And basically, by the way, I need to add something, which is that Hasidut in general is a more feminine kind of Torah. It's one of the best definitions that I heard about what is Hasidut and compared to the Musar system that was the previous way of doing what Hasidut does, which is give a psychological explanation and instruction as how to rectify ourselves, how to work with ourselves. So the Musar version was masculine. It was kind of the head preaching to the heart. It was telling the heart what it should feel and not feel what it should. Whereas it's called Tikkun Adam. And then Hasidut is all about finding ways of reaching the heart more directly and more eye level with stories and songs and farbrengens and ways that sort of bypass the kind of intellectual. And then the heart cooperates more. It doesn't sort of cower beneath the truths that are uttered by the mass. So Hasidut started as only men. It was all Rebbes and Chosids. Even the women became Chosids only later on. So that's a good example of men being men and doing feminine work. So almost all of Hasidut, again, it was almost all men, all the rabbis, all the Chosids, all the stories, but they were all becoming very, very feminine, in the sense that they stopped being this kind of Musar people who had all the truths and they were broken and they were lost and they were confused and they made mistakes and they cried and that's all very, very feminine. So I think that's a very good, world of treasure trove of inspiration for how to be a feminine man while still being a man and not being effeminate. Well, how to be feminine without being effeminate? Maybe that's the word. And now, for young people, it's true. It's very good that you asked that. For young men, it's not so much inter-inclusion because it's still the first stain of watercolor, then it's still dry. And if you add the other one too soon, then that's what I sort of warned against. So the thing is that the challenge, it's always been the challenge, is the Jewish ideal of masculinity was of something that's very present and sort of goes out of itself and wants to conquer the world, but without being, today it's called toxic. And it's very interesting. So toxic masculinity, in Hebrew, it would be Gavriut Re'ela. Ra'el is toxic. And it's the same letters as Orla, the root. Arel and Ra'al, same. So the notion that all masculinity is toxic is, of course, in itself toxic. It's maybe feminine, toxic femininity, but there is toxic masculinity. And the Jewish challenge has always been, this is circumcision. Circumcision is, we don't want to sort of cut off masculinity, we don't want to castrate masculinity, but we don't want to leave it as it is also. We want to refine it. So this refining process is, how do you remain a man and you open up to him? Which means, for example, teaching young men, teenagers, when they're maybe going into shidduchim soon, is that they need to court the woman in a very deep way. And they're going to have to do this all their lives, by the way. It's not up until they say, I do. It's something that they need to learn how to do this very linear kind of move. It's not sort of passively waiting for it to happen, waiting for love to happen, waiting for something to happen. You have to be the one sort of moving things in the world. and being the mover, and being the initiator, and having that kind of confidence, that's a manly thing. It's a good thing to learn. And many women are frustrated by men who are not decisive enough, or they don't know how to go out there. And they need to feel that they're courted, that they're wanted, that someone knows what they want, but without being aggressive about it. So the whole image and wording, both in Hebrew and in English, of courting, is to go in a circle. So you need to develop this kind of linear movement of outgoing and moving, and setting goals and trying to meet those goals. And all this is very masculine, and you go about it. But when you ultimately reach someone, another person, certainly a woman, even another man, then you don't want to go on with this kind of straight movement, because then you sort of break them. You don't want to break them. When you reach another person or a goal, or in actual reality, you have the goal, you start going. But when reality becomes more difficult, then you have to circumcise yourself, which means you need to start courting. Courting means going in circles. You go around. The image is that the woman is in a tower, and then the man comes and he courts her. It starts. He's looking for the opening. If he would sort of, what's the word, like barge in. So that's like, you take it to an extreme. It's like rape. So it's a little bit like, that's an aggressive. That's toxic. Not toxic is when you go in a straight line, but then you soften it and you start sort of spiraling or going around. So you match the circular movement of the feminine. So you start with this kind of linear movement, and then you learn how to. And this is circumcision in a way. It's interesting that in English, circumcision comes from also circular, circle. You want to make the line, you want to turn it into a circle a little bit. So it softens it and it turns it into. Also, interestingly, it's not Jewish symbols, but the exclamation mark and the question mark. The exclamation mark is linear, and that's how masculinity should start. But then, when men meet women and want to court women, they have to turn it into a question mark. They have to round it and soften it. I'm not telling you, I'm asking you, I'm proposing, I'm offering. So I hope this gives you something, a little bit of something. Yeah, so some of it wouldn't. Yeah, like I said, some of it is always has been the case. This is the challenge of Jewish masculinity, and has always been the work of Jewish masculinity. And it's in circumcision, which is this ancient old commandment. But today, this kind of rounding about, or this kind of, it's more challenging, because now the woman has more to say, and requires even more respect and more listening to her. So it becomes ever more needed and a bit more challenging. That's the main thing. But there is something about the work of the men that doesn't change. It has been all the time. And again, what's changing today, this is what 80% of the talk was about women, is what's changing today is what women are going through and where they're going through. And for men, it has always been the work that they needed to do. But again, now it becomes more, it's more of a dialogue, because it's more equal. So they need to be more listeners, more develop the listening side. Yeah, so that so that's the book that I want to write. So the book that I wrote about the women of the Tanakh, they have a little bit of that, a little bit, but there is a book that I want to write. Bezrat Hashem, I should that I should have the resources to be able to do it, but not yet. Hang on. There's one guy missing. Amen. So yeah, David.
Exceeding roles, it can involve easily in a relationship, but also like the halachic things that are on the set in stone. How does that evolve to this new picture? Like, a woman cannot be an head. But things that seem very one-sided, like a woman go out of marriage, she'll declare a mitzvah.
A woman
would go out of the marriage, commit adultery, while she's married.
Yeah.
But if the man, if it's single woman, it's like,
yeah.
Or in halacha, we know she for man to have multiple wives, or all different things seem. How does that work as the rise of the feminine?
Okay, so that's just that one question for the time being.
Sure.
Okay, so a little bit I can answer.
Woman not receiving Yerusha, whatever.
Yeah.
So many halachas, that's just.
Okay, so the halacha is not my forte. That's the first thing I have to say. And the second sort of caveat or sort of things that I have to put out there is that we don't know. So the halacha develops, and halacha can only develop if it grows in a very orthodox way. And who knows what will happen? We don't know. Many things have changed. Women coming into the revolution of women studying Torah went against very explicit things said by Chazal. And it changed because very great rabbis said it needed to change, and they explained and they worked it through, and they found and it was the Chafetz Chaim, it was the Rebbe, it was a bunch of others, and so that things can change if it really grows the way it should be, a kevet tzadagudal out of halachic thinking. So we don't know what will happen. Now, some things you said have changed already. So, for example, if you think about men having, according to Torah, the basis of the Torah is that men can marry multiple women and not the other way around. This is not unique to Judaism. This has been the case in 85% of societies in the anthropological record. It is the case, by the way, 95% of all mammals. So we are a little bit a part also of the natural world, and this is the mammalian norm, and the human norm also is that males can impregnate several females, and not the other way around. And especially if you want people to know who their fathers are and fathers to know who their children are, it can't be the other way around. So there's something that is just biological about it. However, the history of Judaism has been so that this has been neglected in favor of equating women to men, and peaking or arriving at a certain peak with the Chaim Rabbeinu Gershom. And this has been in many ways. So, and in many ways, you can see that the Torah wanted this. The Torah hints in many ways that this is the ideal, with Adam and Chava being created just one man and woman. It's not one man and 4 women, or 5 women. And in Shir HaShirim, you have the woman saying, "Ketapuach be'atzayar," as an apple in the orchard, so is my husband. So that's no surprise, because she has one husband. But he also says, "Kishoshana be'nechochim," as a rose and thorns, completely symmetrical, monogamous. And there's a lot of examples. And the fact that all the 3 fathers initially wanted one wife, and it only happened to be the 2 of them were forced in some way to marry other women, or were asked to marry other women, but not initially, not lechatchila. And there are tons of examples. I have a whole list of it. And so the Torah is basically saying, when the Torah was given, it was the norm. The norm was polygyny, that is, several women to one man. There is almost no polyandry, several men to one woman anywhere in the world. That was the norm because of obvious reasons, and then the Torah didn't break this. Just like it didn't break the concept of slavery, it broke the concept of idolatry, but the other things, it was more gradual. So it says it's allowed, but it's not the ideal. The ideal is it's like Adam and Chava, it's like Noach and Naamah also. After the Mabuli, before the flood, you have Lemech with 2 wives. It's a very negative story, and the Mabuli is another sort of very monogamous ideal. It's only male and female, one male and female coming into the ark. So that. Hevel was given 2 twin sisters. Yes, that's true. It's a midrash, yeah. So and but generally speaking, most of the thing, it's very much points the way. You end up only with basically David and Shlomo. Shlomo, it's also very negative, that it's clear that he shouldn't have had so many women. Anyway, it's complex. It's an evolution, but. Yeah, so again, that was the norm. That's like 18 is very few for a king in ancient times. That was like really lowering the bar. So, but the point is this: the Torah insinuates in many, many ways, and you know what the most profound limb is that there is one God in 70 nations, but God chooses one nation. He could have chosen more, and he chooses one. And then he has prophets, but they're called like concubines or something that's not. He has one wife. And then the sota thing also comes from that, and the infidelity. It all comes from this. Now, what happens in the end is that you have this. You have the written Torah as a kind of document that is reflective of biology. It reflects the fact that men can impregnate many women. It reflects the fact that men are by nature attracted simultaneously, can be attracted to many women. It reflects it, and it sort of validates it in a way that this is normal. On the other hand, you have the oral Torah and the actual minhagim of Yiddish, of Yahadut, that you will not find one rabbi in the world that almost that will tell you can have, even now, even the Sephardic world, which didn't like Rabbeinu Gershom, as Batachlis, became monogamous. So you have everywhere it's monogamous, and then that's the actual. So what you have is kind of very interesting and beautiful tension that the Torah reflects and validates the difference in biology and psychology of men and women. That women are more monogamous in nature and men are more polygamous in nature. But then also he tells us, but we want men to be as monogamous as women. But it's more work for them. It doesn't come as naturally as it does to them. So when you have that, it's a very beautiful. It's good that we have those old halachot. Those old halachot reflect something very deep. Modern society tends to forget where it came from, and then it tends to repress all kinds of tendencies and aspects in the biological and psychological nature of who we are, because it thinks the universe was created in 2000. But if we carry on this history of texts that are, when it's built up on top of the other, then it helps us remember how we're built. And if men, for example, feel that the mere fact that they're attracted to, that they entertain the desire to maybe have another woman, that's not normal of them, right? And if they're told it is normal, but you have to work on it and not actualize it and not follow it, and you have to be with one woman and find infinite depth with that one woman, and find more and more, faces within that one woman, then this is much more balanced than saying we should all be monogamous, we should all the same, and if you have polygamous thought, then it's wrong. So I think that's one way of understanding all this halachot, and many of them have changed. And the whole thing with the Yerusha has changed. I'm not an expert in this, but I know that there have been rabbis, and this is again, halacha is in evolution, and all the previous levels are included and are preserved, but then there's things that are added to them, and that creates a much better reflection of the way we were, and the way we still are in some senses.
There's also this modern time that will come into bring us very soon, the restoration of the Sanhedrin. To have the restoration of the Sanhedrin, you have no idea how things are going to be changed.
And not just we.
On one end, it's full Torah of the Sinai. On the other hand, once we have
just like it was in the time of Chazal.
The Torah of the early generations, there could be a lot of changes that will come.
Yeah, thank you so much. So. Yeah. Now, if there will be women rabbis and the Torah and all this, I don't know. I do know that the way it's happening now is that it's too much in the conservative reform spectrum, and that only hinders. It hinders this.
Before he changed his name.
In the box?
When you come to
yeah.
It's supposed to be this hang up, like being too indented, right?
Well, there's two incidents. There's one with Pharaoh and one with Avimelech. And Pharaoh is before the name change, and Avimelech is afterwards. There's during the year between the name change and the birth of Yitzchak, there's the second. And if you go into the little details, the difference between what it was to be in Pharaoh's house was to be in Avimelech's house, you also see some of the changes, but that's another. Hang on, wait. So you were before, but get it well. Yeah. Yeah.
So in time to come, there's a really rich and interesting vision for the rise of feminine and a new equality and new vision everything sounds really encouraging. And the question is, in times like this, would the women still need to wear wigs? Or, is the external format will still stay the same?
I mean, that's the modesty thing, which you touched upon a little bit, is really very integral to the woman's voice emerging. That the world and the men are going to be able to really hear that voice when it's enclosed in modesty.
So that's you're answering, you know.
I'm sort of, yeah, that's right. Because in other words, it's not looking at the wig as something that's oppressive. It's a different.
Okay, let me try and answer from my.
I still don't understand, for instance, what's the difference between long hair wig and I understand how doing the hair with a scalp.
Okay, so first, women don't need to wear a pe'ah, they need to cover their hair. And then the one solution for this is the mitpachat, and the other solution for this is the pe'ah, and there's a little bit of a debate in Judaism. And Chabad, the Rebbe insisted very much and stressed that he wanted the pe'ah and not the mitpachat for several reasons. But I'll break that question into a few little answers. So before we go into the pe'ah or the mitpachat, we need to talk about modesty in general. So modesty in general is a thing that needs to be explained and understood. I don't think it's something that it touches upon very basic and unchanging things about human nature. The purpose of modesty is twofold. From one side, that's the more well-known side, it's supposed to distract men from looking at the outside of the woman and to focusing on the inside of the woman. So if there's something about the male gaze that is activated very strongly by external sight, right? Men are affected immediately by pictures of naked women. Women not so much the other way around. So that's how it is. And so the one purpose of this is that sort of you cover up the body in order to put emphasis on the face, because the face is not an external thing. It's panim is pnim. That's the window to the inside of you. So when the covering of the body basically says, the body is not the main part of me, the face is the main part of me. The face is the window into my subjective inner world. I want you to try this. The modesty sort of moves the man's gaze from the outside to the inside. And by the way, if you look at the frum world, men are dressed just as modestly as women. So it ended up being the same partly because of this, right? And so this is what the other more deep understanding of what modesty is that it's also for the woman herself. This is just for the men. But there's something about modesty that when and it goes for both men and women, but again, the whole thing starts with women, but is that modesty helps me connect to my inner being. There's something about me. Even if I'm alone in the world or alone in the house, and I'm undressed or dressed or covered up, there's something. What is the tsanua part of me? The tsanua part of me is my soul. My soul hides within my body. My soul is very delicate and very shy and very modest. And it doesn't like being exposed. It doesn't like externalizing the outside of me. And there's something it has to do with self-dignity, and it has to do with being an inner connection. Modesty is something very, very subtle, and it has to do with not advertising myself and not being overly, like loud and the original appearance of the verb tsanua in the Tanakh is v'atznei lechet. There's modest walking. There's modest the way you carry yourself. And so the inner, deeper meaning of tzniut is that it connects you more to the inside of you. This is, you can say that the first aspect of tzniut is the more external aspect of tzniut. It's the less tsanua aspect of tzniut. If we only talk about the wearing and hiding and wearing and the long sleeves and the stockings, then it's nude. But it's the immodest side of tzniut because it's the external side of tzniut. If you only talk about that, it becomes increasingly, the feeling is that it's not a modest conversation. But the modest and inner side of tzniut is that there's something about it that connects you to the inside of you. There's something crude, there's something detached when you walk about or behave in an immodest way, against both men and women. So this is something I don't see as being affected or needs to be affected by the rise of the feminine, because I think it's something that touches upon very basic characteristics of human existence, of men and women in their relationship, both of these sides. So men still have their desires, and it helps them respect women when women are romantically attracted. It helps them not think about him in objectifying ways. You know, nobody wants women being objectified, but today there's a kind of people are trying to eat the cake and have the cake whole and eat it too. They say we don't want women objectified, but women can do whatever they want, and if they want, they can present themselves as sex objects. But it doesn't really go together. So if you want women not to be objectified, then don't contribute to the objectification of women. And that's what modesty tries to do. And also because, again, it touches upon very deep things that are about you, that are about all of us. So now, the sheitel, the pe'ah, that's actually, in a way, part of the rise of femininity. And I'll tell you why. One of the reasons, there were several reasons why the Rebbe preferred very much, not preferred, like he said, this is what I want my chassid women to have. So one of them is that it covers the hair more than the mitzvah, right? It's more, okay, so that's one. But there is another one. And the other one was that he wanted women to be active in the world, coming out into the world. In America, in Europe, in very modern societies, and he didn't want them to look like primitive women. That's basically it. He didn't want them to look like traditional Eastern European women with the mitzvah, right? So maybe today, with African women, there's a kind of, it's a new fashion, or something else. But generally speaking, I don't think Chabad would have been able to achieve half of what they achieved if the women would have been with mitzvahot. And I'll tell you one sentence that my wife came from a Dati Leumi family. They all had hats or mitzvahot. And she transitioned to the pe'ah with one sentence that our Rav, Rabbi Ginsburg, told her. She said, I don't understand this thing. So I told her it's a way of both being modest and introverted and having your hair being covered up and being extroverted at the same time. That's the way to be both introverted and extroverted, to be sort of within yourself. Nobody sees your real hair, and you know it. Even if on the outside it looks as beautiful as whatever, it doesn't matter. For you, psychologically, you know that your own hair is like your thoughts in some way. The arot and hasharot, it's the same root. So it's within you. But on the other hand, you're extroverted. You can come out. You can be in the world. So in many ways, this is dafka part of the femininity, the pe'ah. So it's the what you asked in the beginning. It's even lechatchila. It's part of the. It's still kamavan okay, absolutely okay for other branches and streams that people prefer the mitzvah. It's absolutely okay. It's halacha. It's the classic halacha. It's less contended. But that's I think that's my answer to that question. Golan.
I think you mentioned this lecture, but the concept.
Wait, some people are you see here? Okay, wonderful.
Panim and panim, and
yeah.
When you talked about connection, the level of connection, intimacy between men and women, can you, if you have an idea of how back-to-back relation, whole can be?
Wait, hang on. So yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for coming. And so I'm here, and if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay, and if you want to leave, then I understand it's late at night. So I'm just I just wanted to say that that you feel free to do whatever you want, and yeah. So yeah.
So how the whole becomes panim, or maybe sometimes the whole is only what you have.
Okay, so Jews are optimists, so we don't want to never say the last thing you said. It's not. We have the whole purpose of relationships in general, of all human relationships, is to transition from the natural state of a chol, that's the natural state, the egoistical state, to the state of panim lefanim.
What is that called?
Back to back.
What is that?
It means that you don't really see the other person. You turn their back on them. And you treat them, you relate to them. They were created, Adam and Chava, back to back. It's a connection. It's a relationship, but it's not a good relationship. A relationship that they don't really see one another, and they don't really respect one. They're not really being interested in one another. And they're just, each one is really trying to go in another way, but they're stuck together. And it's also, things are automatics. The Ramban says that they could get pregnant in this way, but it was just an automatic process. It's just the seed moved from one part of the body to the other. It means that there's no choice and no courting and no intimacy and no again, it's all just objects one to the other. They're objects one to the other. They're not subjects one to the other. So that is the basic thing about all relationships, is that the natural state is that we don't really see the other one, and we have to show an interest. We have to look at them. We have to seek their face and want to see their face. Their face is their inside. It's their subjectivity. It's their soul. And this is the work. And sometimes it's true that one person turns and the other one doesn't turn. This is called panim be'achol. This is also an intermediate state, panim be'achol. And then the lesson that needs to be learned then is that don't give up. Is that when you're looking at the other person's back, but you're praying and asking for him to turn, even if he's akshan, she'orif. He's obstinate, that is obstinate. Then you don't give up, because the fact that you turned your face towards them, it sort of tickles their back, and it'll cause them to move in your direction. Hi everyone, and thanks for watching. If you like this video, please leave a comment. I'd like to hear what you think. Also subscribe to the channel, share the video with your friends. And if you want to help me make more videos, please consider becoming a supporter via Patreon. You can find the link in the description below. Thank you.